This video is brought to you by friend of the channel Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about them, as well as a special offer they're making available through my channel. This review is spoiler free. Now I know why you've clicked on this video. You want to know if The Last of Us Part 1, the remake of Naughty Dog's magnum opus, a game already remastered on PS4, is worthy of the remake label and worth that $70 price tag. To answer that question, I'm going to enlist the help of my good friend, RoboCop. Now, as everyone knows, RoboCop is the only perfect film. RoboCop has the best cast, the best writing, the best world building, the best action, and the best one-liners of any film ever made. These are scientific facts, and anyone who disagrees with these facts is cringe. RoboCop has been released on a variety of different formats over the years. I've had it on VHS back in the day, then I bought it on DVD, and then on Blu-ray. Most recently, I purchased a new 4K box set edition, which has both the theatrical and director's cuts looking superb, thanks to an excellent 4K glow-up, and a raft of behind-the-scenes extras allowing me to immerse myself in the deep lore of the RoboCop universe. Now, I paid 100 Australian dollars for that, and that was like the best money I spent all year, because RoboCop rules. And if I can get a version of that cinematic masterpiece that looks slightly better than the other versions I own, then I'm gonna do that, because RoboCop, and I cannot stress this enough, rules. That brings us to The Last of Us Part 1. Just as I am of the view that RoboCop is the perfect film, many people believe that The Last of Us is the perfect video game. I do not share that view, but I am sympathetic to it, owing to the fact that I understand we all like different things to different degrees. So what if you could get a version of The Last of Us that looks slightly better than the other versions? Is it worth $70 US? Well, that's not a real question, because this game doesn't look slightly better. It looks way fucking better. Like, way better. In every key visual aspect, The Last of Us Remake provides a profound visual uplift that not only makes the game look better, but it makes the telling of the story better, because the new facial animations here are so good that it's like seeing these characters' actual facial expressions for the first time. But that isn't the only thing this package delivers. The accessibility options here are industry leading, opening up the game to an entirely new audience. The additional gameplay options allow you to tweak this experience in ways you couldn't before, smoothing out some of the game's rough edges or making it more challenging than ever. The 3D audio changes are noticeable, providing a more immersive soundscape, particularly during combat, and changes to enemy and partner AI are subtle, but they do make the game feel less goofy than it did previously. So all of this is really impressive, but in this era of video game remakes, The Last of Us Part 1 falls victim to the expectation that gamers often have about what a remake should entail and how much that product should cost. Many will argue that the $70 price tag is indefensible, especially given how little the core gameplay experience has changed. Many will point to the outdated puzzle, exploration, and survival elements, all of which could have been ripe for revision in this package, and say that these things remaining untouched proves that this is just a cynical cash grab. Many will point to the exclusion of the game's faction multiplayer mode and argue that you're paying more than you did nearly 10 years ago and you're getting less for it. But to be fair, the Left Behind DLC is included in this package. That wasn't included in the original PS3 release, so you can't have it both ways on that. Here's the thing though, right? I am not here to tell you what The Last of Us Part 1 is worth to you. You have to decide that for yourself. Personally, it's not worth 125 Australian dollars to me, but I don't have the connection to this that I have to RoboCop. If I did, I think I would be extremely satisfied with what Naughty Dog have done here. Put another way, I have paid far more for far less when it comes to repurchasing new editions of films, books, or albums I love. In the context of any other medium, the improvements that The Last of Us Part 1 brings to its source material would be celebrated as an unmitigated triumph. This shits all over that CG that was smushed into the re-releases of the original Star Wars movies. This is very good stuff that breathes new life into one of the most celebrated games of all time. If you want to pay $70 for that, you can. If you don't, well, Sony will probably give it away on PS Plus for free in a few years, which is more than I can say for RoboCop.
Watch out! Stay down!
If you got anything to confess, this would be the place to do it.
The best starting point for The Last of Us Part 1 is the extensive options menu, featuring a suite of options so expansive that few console games can match it. The game has 6 base difficulties, but within that there's the option to tweak specific elements. You can change how much health you have, how aggressive and effective enemies are, how useful your allies are, how forgiving stealth is, and how generously resources flow. If you'd like to make The Last of Us feel more like an action game, you can crank enemy aggressiveness and increase resource drops. Similarly, if you'd like to play it more like a survival horror game, you might decrease resource drops and make it easier for enemies to spot you when stealthing. There's also the inclusion of Permadeath Modes, setting you back to the start of either the most recent chapter or act, your choice, or just ending your playthrough right there and forcing you to start from the beginning all over again. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to gameplay customization, however. In the control section, there's the option for lock-on aim, which is essentially just auto-aim. I've always found The Last of Us shooting to be really clunky, so I kinda like this. You can turn this on and tweak how strongly it kicks in, and there's even an auto-target option which snaps to the next target when you kill one. The HUD section is where you'll go if you want to create a really immersive experience, free from the UI that might serve as a reminder that this is just a video game. You can turn off pretty much every element of the UI here, can tweak how often hints appear, and even toggle an option to highlight collectibles you've already collected in previous playthroughs. The accessibility options menu is a bit of a misnomer almost, because this stuff isn't just about making the title more accessible, though it absolutely does do that. It's also about giving anyone a suite of options to tweak gameplay elements to their almost exact preference. There's the option to make QTEs button holds, you can do melee combos by holding down the button instead of pressing it repeatedly, you can set your aiming mode to a toggle rather than a hold, same with sprinting, same with crafting, you can set an option to automatically switch to another weapon when you run out of ammo, that is awesome. You can also set auto item pickup so you don't have to run around dark rooms pushing yourself into the sides while spamming the square button repeatedly. You can turn off camera shake, motion blur, and film grain. You can also set the camera distance from your character, and there's an FOV slider. They don't make a huge difference to be honest, but they're there. In the navigation and traversal section of the accessibility menu, there's an enhanced listen mode option, which essentially allows you to ping the environment around you for resources, and you can set how far that ping reaches. This is awesome for anyone that wants to have one of those high action playthroughs where you don't ever want to find yourself resource starved, or just for anyone who hates hunting for resources, and I personally fall into that category. This menu also houses a skip puzzle option, allowing you to completely nope out of any and all puzzle you might find either too challenging or too annoying. I am looking at you, ladder puzzles. It was okay the first 3 or 4 times, but by the 12th ladder puzzle, I was done. The Last of Us Part 1 has the best audio cues in any video game. You can get audio cues for traversal and combat, where you're informed about the need to jump over certain areas, or when you've successfully locked onto or shot a target. There are vibration cues that do something similar, so the controller will vibrate when you've locked onto a target. In cutscene descriptors are a first. These will describe key visual elements in scenes for the benefit of those with a visual impairment. And another really interesting one is speech vibrations, where the DualSense will vibrate in different ways when people are speaking, denoting the intensity of the lines being delivered. Finally, there's a combat accessibility menu allowing you to tweak a huge range of variables, including a slow mode toggle, which you can activate by swiping right on the trackpad, and it slows the entire game down for as long as you need. So this suite of options is pretty incredible. At the most basic and most important level, these options open up the game to people who straight up couldn't play it before, people with different impairments that would have held them back from enjoying this game. Now they get the chance to experience this, and that is fantastic. Beyond that, these options allow anyone to refine this experience to their taste. Like I said, I don't enjoy hunting for nuts and bolts inside of drawers, that's boring. This options menu gives me lots of ways to sidestep that. I've never much liked this game's shooting mechanics, and the options menu gives me lots of ways to improve them, or at least reduce their most annoying elements. I don't like ladder puzzles, and the more of them I can skip, the better. And that's the thing though, right? I know a lot of people play this game for the story, the characters, and the world. The Last of Us Part 1 has all of these options allowing you to play through this game in ways that lets you focus on the stuff that you like, rather than being bogged down by what I think are some pretty dated gameplay elements. But similarly, I know there are a lot of people that love the way The Last of Us plays. They cannot get enough of the combat, the stealth, they love the laddering, And for those people, they have all of these options to make the game harder, more realistic, and more immersive than ever before. And that too is fantastic. If I have one gripe with all of these options, it's the extras menu. This does give you the option to apply skins to characters' clothing, backpacks, and weapons. There's a filter gallery allowing you to change the overall appearance of the game, and a gameplay modifiers menu that, if it's anything like The Last of Us Part 2, will include things like infinite ammo, infinite crafting, etc. There's also a director's commentary track where Neil Druckmann, Ashley Johnson, and Troy Baker will provide commentary over the top of the cinematics. Now, the problem with all of this is that you need to finish the main game in order to unlock any of it. Now, I've already finished this game like 3 times. I would have liked to have been able to access this stuff from the get-go. I mean, at the very least, the director's commentary track, I think that would have been awesome. And given how liberal The Last of Us Part 1 is with all of its gameplay options, I'm unsure why they've locked all this other stuff down behind yet another completion of a game we've already probably completed a handful of times.
You know, I've never been this close. It's the outside. Look how dark it is.
To this point, we've all been discussing amongst ourselves just how much better this remake looks than the original. We've seen gameplay provided by Sony, we've seen screenshots, we've seen leaks. I mean, it wouldn't be a Naughty Dog game without some leaks, right? I'll admit that throughout all of that discourse, I was on the fence about it. It definitely looked better than the PS4 remaster, of course, but how much better it looked really depended on which scene I was looking at and what was going on, etc. So I went into this thinking that The Last of Us Part 1 is going to look better than the remaster, but I wasn't really expecting all that much. Playing through this for myself, seeing firsthand how this game looks, it is impressive even before you start to do comparisons back to the original. As you play this, you don't see a remastered PS3 or PS4 game. You see a beautiful, contemporary, current-gen video game that goes toe-to-toe with some of the best-looking games on the market today. Now, I know that statement is going to get picked apart. The console wars and the vitriol surrounding this franchise will see specific screenshots pulled in bad faith and circulated wildly. You will not struggle to find lots of people that want to convince you that this game looks like shit, actually. These people are having a fucking laugh. This is a really, really beautiful game, both in terms of its art design and its technical chops. Every single environment is so dense with detail that I just never saw in previous playthroughs, either because it wasn't there and it's now been added, or because this remake has provided new clarity and lighting to every texture, letting you see things that were earlier obscured or forcefully downscaled owing to the limitations of previous gen hardware. But to be really clear, the point I want to make here isn't this looks really good for a PS3 game. My point is, this looks amazing for any game, full stop. But then after that, you can shift into the world of comparisons, and that's when the scale of this leap becomes even more evident. I would play through chapters of this game and then go back and rewatch segments of it on YouTube, and I was stunned as I was doing these side-by-side comparisons. Naughty Dog promised a complete overhaul of environmental art design and lighting, and they did not lie. They have absolutely delivered on that. As I was playing through it, I asked myself, sure, this looks better, but does it add anything over and above that? I came to the conclusion that I think it does, because the ruined world in which The Last of Us is set often serves as a very pronounced form of sympathetic background, setting the tone for the conversations you're having with Ellie or the others that join you during your travels. When we're making our way down towards Billstown through that forest, and Ellie's talking about the beauty of it all and how she's never seen anything like it, that's a far more meaningful interaction, because I too felt the beauty of this space in a way that even the PS4 version didn't allow for. Similarly, the spore-filled dank of infected zones feels so much more oppressive owing to their detailing, all of the decay in bloom around you as you try to silently wade through it. Whether it was something beautiful or something horrifying, I felt this world more keenly because there were so many new things to see, and I could see all of it so much more clearly. As impressive as this improvement in environmental detail and lighting is, it really has nothing on the changes to character models and faces. Gone are the more awkwardly stylized faces, particularly Ellie's. Gone are the more expressionless faces, particularly Tess's. In their place are, and I mean this, probably the best facial animations that the video game industry has to offer. I can only recall it being as good or better in The Last of Us 2 or Guardians of the Galaxy. The facial detailing here in Part 1 is industry benchmark and one of the sturdiest load-bearing pillars in this game's renovation. I mean, just look at this comparison between old Tess and new. Just look at how pronounced and profound this difference is.
I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look. There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
I said in my intro that these faces lift the storytelling because they're like seeing the character's actual facial expressions for the first time, and I don't think I could put it any better than that. I never really much enjoyed the gameplay side of The Last of Us, for all the reasons I've listed earlier, but I do believe it's one of the greatest written games of all time, with some of the best voice performances from any cast in a video game. Just as I felt this world more keenly for all of its enhancements, I felt this story more keenly for the expressiveness of the people in it. Naughty Dog said that their goal was to bring you into these scenes with these faces, and again, they absolutely delivered. I was blown away every time I'd meet a new character and see for myself just how much more their face would tell me without the character needing to say anything different at all. It's an enhancement that only the world of video games could deliver, excavating through technology new layers of meaning and emotion. If you have any affection for this story and these characters, then I think you do owe it to yourself to experience this retelling at whatever price point you feel most comfortable with, because I think you will take new things away from this story for having seen how it has been written across these new faces. Just as there's been much debate about how much of a visual uplift The Last of Us Part 1 delivers, there's been considerable discourse around the changes or lack thereof to gameplay elements. I'm not sure if Naughty Dog actually said this, but we certainly all got it in our heads that one of the goals of Part 1 was to bring its gameplay closer to that of Part 2, namely in the form of deeper and more flexible combat. I know there was a lot of talk about Joel being able to go prone and hide under things, which would have greatly expanded the stealth side of the game, but that would have necessitated huge changes to level design, enemy placement, and behavior, so I'm not surprised that Naughty Dog didn't go down this path. In terms of the stuff that Naughty Dog have actually promised for Part 1's gameplay, it's all of the accessibility stuff I've mentioned earlier, its reworks to partner and enemy AI, and its improvements to the melee combat system. But Naughty Dog weren't clear about this. I think it means improvements to animations and pairing, since it certainly doesn't add anything like a parry system or any gameplay stuff that I was able to notice. So does the AI make a difference? Yeah, it does. I definitely recall The Last of Us feeling very goofy when I played it back on the PS3 and PS4. Enemies were really dumb, they weren't able to adapt to situations intelligently, they presented as really easy targets, they weren't particularly clever in their flanks, they were just kind of dumb meat sacks like enemies in Uncharted. I'm not here to tell you that things are vastly different in Part 1, but they're different enough that the overall combat experience feels tighter, more tense, and more immersive. Targets will stick to cover a lot longer to wait you out, they'll adapt on the fly, repositioning when necessary, and they'll flank you way more intelligently. I counted 3 different scenarios where I was basically like jump scared by an enemy who had silently crept around behind me to flank me, only to then charge in and melee me. The whole combat experience just feels better. It didn't make me like the combat in The Last of Us, but it did make me take it a lot more seriously. Certainly a big part of that are the changes to partner AI. One of the most immersion-shattering things in the last game was you silently stalking around to avoid human foes or clickers, only for Ellie or someone else to reposition completely out in the open, in full sight of the enemy. That isn't completely removed here, I did notice it once, but it is far less common. I actually think the biggest change to the gameplay side of The Last of Us Part 1 isn't gameplay per se, it's audio, but it has such a massive impact on gameplay that that's where I'd file it. Part 1 introduces full 3D audio powered by PS5's Tempest engine. I played this on a 5.1 surround sound setup and using headphones, and I can tell you that the soundscape is noticeably richer and more informative. The sound of clickers and infected, the exact location of human enemies as they shout and shoot, it all rings out so clearly here and absolutely elevates combat scenarios. Beyond that though, it also enriches non-combat situations. The ambient ambient noises you hear while exploring, or the conversations you have with your companions all come through with more directional specificity owing to the spatial audio. Speaking more broadly about The Last of Us Part 1's gameplay, I think some of it has aged fairly poorly, and I do think a remake would have been an opportunity to revisit some of this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that Naughty Dog should have done this, I'm not saying that there isn't enough in this package to justify the price tag, etc. I'm just saying that there's a lot of going around picking up nuts and bolts, opening empty drawers, a lot of supplement hunting to feed some weird, goofy upgrade system, a lot of ladder puzzles, a lot of pushing dumpsters around. I mean, if you were doing a full bottom-up remake of this game, you'd probably leave the story and the world completely intact, you'd probably make some notable changes to combat and stealth, and then you'd make a heap of changes to all the other shit I just listed because it is not great at this point. In terms of presentation, Part 1 absolutely feels like a contemporary current-gen title. The changes to enemy AI and audio do help its combat keep pace a little, but the other aspects of the game really betray how long ago this was first released. I know that it would have been a vast undertaking to change some of these things, but I do think it would have been a worthwhile endeavor, as it would bring these aspects of the game up to the standard achieved by the rest of the package.
Seems like more people are getting infected.
That just means more people are sneaking out.
So as I said at the start of this video, I've paid far more to get far less than what The Last of Us Part 1 is offering. A complete overhaul of environments and lighting, a complete overhaul of facial animations that I think really do elevate the telling of this story, a raft of gameplay and accessibility options, improvements to enemy and partner AI, new 3D audio, and a heap of other little things like a speedrun mode, and director's commentary, and skins for characters and weapons, and etc, etc. There's a lot here for returning fans, but also for new ones. And it's sort of taken as a given at this point that this remake is largely for those that will come to the game after The Last of Us TV show, which will soon air on HBO. The Witcher 3 got a massive sales spike after the release of the Netflix series, and I don't doubt that the same thing will happen here for The Last of Us. If an HBO TV show enjoyer was to finish that Pedro Pascal-led season and said, hey, I want to experience this game now, then without Part 1, the only game they would have been able to play is the remastered PS4 version. Would that have sufficed? Absolutely. I played that 2 years ago, just prior to the release of Part 2, and its story and world are so affecting that it leaves a mark on you no matter what. But you're still seeing the cracks, you're still seeing the creaking bones of a title first released on the PS3 and then touched up a little for the PS4. It not only feels old to play, but it looks it as well. Now, those coming to the franchise fresh will be able to enjoy this remaking of this world, this remaking of these characters, and the subtle but noticeable improvements to other aspects of the package. The Last of Us Part 1 no longer looks like an old game, it looks like a truly contemporary one, and with the impact that this has on the way this story is told, I think it makes a very compelling argument for the value of this remake. Yes, Naughty Dog could have gone further with gameplay improvements, but they didn't. This is the game that sits before us, and while everyone is going to have their own view on what price tag it should carry, I don't think anyone will doubt the earnestness with which Naughty Dog sought to honor the legacy of this franchise or the fans who love it so. If The Last of Us is your RoboCop, then you are absolutely going to love this. Are you an artist, photographer, or someone who works in the visual mediums? If so, I'm jealous of you. I wish I had skills like that. Imagine being able to draw something and it not look terrible. That would be cool. Anyway, if you fall into that category and you are looking to promote your work, then you might want to think about publishing a portfolio somewhere, and there's no better tool to help you do that than Squarespace. Squarespace have ready-made portfolio templates that you can select and immediately begin customizing to your personal taste. When you're happy with the design, you can begin uploading your work, and it's going to look super professional because that's Squarespace's speciality, professional-looking websites. It's not just about looks though. Squarespace can help you promote your work through email campaigns, through SEO tools, and through social media integration, so your work can be discovered and shared. You don't need any knowledge or experience to get started with this stuff. Squarespace have put in all the work to make the entire process so easy and so seamless, even for absolute beginners. As I mentioned earlier, Squarespace are a long-running partner of this channel, 3 years running now actually. I really appreciate that support. Squarespace are helping me turn my passion into a career, and that's what they do for a lot of people, because if you want to turn your passion into a career, then a website is a really good place to start. To get started, visit squarespace.com, and if you really want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.